First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for saying no thanks when my parents told me my birthday gift is picking out a car / getting a car? So, I am 17 years old, and I got my license about a year ago by now. I didn't get it because I needed or wanted to drive anywhere. We live in the middle of town. My school is a 2-minute walk, job a 5-minute walk. Most of my hobbies like the gym are within 10 minutes, and almost all my friends live within a 20-minute walking distance. I only got it because it is good to have, if that makes sense. You know, emergencies and when I move out and get a job, so need my own car. My parents have been asking me when I am buying a car all year long. They anticipated I would buy one, so I could take over duties like driving my siblings places, picking them up from school. They go to a fancy primary school 45 minutes outside of town, and do stuff like pick up food, you know the deal. Honestly, it has all just made me not want a car even more. The prospect of walking out of school and instead of doing homework, hanging with friends, going to work, etc. I get to drive 45 minutes to pick up my siblings and spend 45 minutes driving home with them screaming in my ears, and follow that up by taking them to practice. No, thank you. So, I turned 17 a month ago, and I didn't get anything apart from the promise of a big surprise from my parents. I figured they must be broke because of everything going on, so I obviously didn't make a big deal out of it. I was wrong. They had been putting money aside all year to let me pick out a car, and today they revealed it to me. And I just said, mostly out of shock, no thanks. I'd rather just get a new monitor or something. Dad absolutely lost his crap, calling me ungrateful, and Mom just seemed extremely disappointed. I get most guys my age dream about getting a car, especially a brand new one, but for me it's just not worth it at all. Getting a car is pretty worthless to me, and just means getting a crap ton of extra chores, so I'd end up having even less free time, and I already barely have any. Am I being the a-hole here? Sure feels like I am. Now for the top comments. It's a trap. Well done. You've Assassin's Creeded your way around a trap. My suggestion? First of all, be grateful that they are doing this for you. But tell them that you want to wait to get a car until college because you aren't ready yet and want to focus on school right now. Basically, defer the gift. Accept it, but defer it for later. Straight up finessing that dish. My parents gave me their old car for my 17th birthday. I was expected to drive my siblings to their activities and drive them to their friends' houses or to the movies, etc. However, I was only allowed to drive the car for my own enjoyment twice per week, and I wasn't allowed to drive the car to school. I was basically the live-in chauffeur for their kids. As an added bonus, whenever my parents were mad at me, they'd threaten to take the car away, but only for the 2 days a week I was allowed to drive it, not for the chauffeuring of my siblings. I eventually just handed my dad back the keys and told them I didn't want the car anymore as it wasn't worth it. They were quite shocked, and then they got upset when they realized I wasn't bluffing. Wow, at least my parents want to give me a new car. You get the old rooster and the crap. But yeah, I'm pretty sure the sibling chauffeur thing is but the start. Not the a-hole, but you need to talk this over with your parents. It seems like they want you to take on more chores for them, and you should discuss whether that is right or fair. They're a-holes for overreacting to your polite refusal. It's about more than just a gift for you. It means increased unwanted family contributions. I don't think there is any way I can bring it to them without it being framed like I don't appreciate them or hate my siblings or something. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not being interested in part of my ethnic background? So, I'm half Chinese and Korean and was raised solely by my mom. My parents were college sweethearts. But when my mom got pregnant, my dad's family was furious because they expected him to eventually end up with a Korean girl. Their ultimatum was to give up his girlfriend or his family, and you can probably guess who he chose. Nonetheless, I did grow up spending the occasional weekend with him, so I wouldn't say our relationship was entirely bad. Unfortunately, my dad passed away about 2 years ago. It was unexpected and sudden. His passing took a huge toll on his family, with his mom taking it the hardest. She's been trying really hard to establish a relationship with me ever since. My dad didn't have any other children, so I guess it's understandable. I was initially okay with spending time with them, but they've been really aggressive with forcing Korean culture on me. I've been dragged to church by them a few times. My aunts have tried pressuring me into taking Korean classes. It's gotten to a point where I've started to ignore their calls, and they're now contacting my mom to try to get a hold of me. Yes, even during a damn pandemic. And the fact that they don't like the Chinese part of me doesn't help. Every compliment is backhanded. My good work ethic is because I'm Korean, My intelligence is because I'm Korean, and my dad's mom loves to talk about how pretty I am, and how I obviously get it from my dad because my features don't exist for Chinese, despite me being the literal spitting image of my mom. The only real reason why I agreed to spend time with my dad's family is because I felt obligated to. I'm not interested in Korean culture, and I don't feel Korean at all. They've reminded me countless times that it's important to learn about my heritage and whatnot. But why? I think if everyone looks far back enough, we'll all probably find a different ethnic root. That doesn't mean that it'll hold any real value for us. My ethnic background is just my ethnic background. My mom and grandparents think I should be open to it. They acknowledge that how my dad/his family treated my mom was crappy, but ultimately, my relationship with them is separate from their relationship with them. Still, at the end of the day, my mom's culture is what I grew up with and identify with. I can speak Chinese dialects. I accompany my grandparents to temples. I love Chinese food. I'm more Chinese than I ever will be Korean. I genuinely don't think there's anything wrong with not wanting to immerse myself into a culture that holds no real importance for me. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I have said it before, and I'll say it again. Your feelings can never make you an a-hole. It is your actions that can make you an a-hole. You don't seem to have done anything terribly bad, and your Korean family does seem to be quite annoying. I am going not the a-hole on this one. You are not to blame. They're pushing you away by pressuring you into doing things you don't want. I kind of think, am I the a-hole questions that are just about emotions should be pulled. Not that this person doesn't have a real issue. Their writing was very compelling, and I enjoyed reading it. But there's no conflict. As you pointed out, you can't be an a-hole for an emotion. Not the a-hole. They hated your mom's heritage from the beginning of time, and are trying to have a fully Korean grandchild instead of a mixed one. If you are, just cut them off. They aren't trying to include you. They're just trying to completely change you and don't want to accept the Chinese part of you. The ironic part is that they're entirely to blame for OP not feeling Korean. Not the a-hole. As you said, roots do not define you. You were raised by half of your ethnic heritage. The other half is just kinda there for you. If your Korean family was trying to incorporate Korean heritage with your Chinese heritage when you identify as such, not diminish one for the other, this would be a completely different story. It's strange, because I've always felt that both cultures share a lot of ideals and customs. I haven't spent nearly as much time with my dad's side as I have with my mom's, yet I can still draw many similarities in their values. It just makes it more off-putting, how they're so insistent on me having to learn about Korean culture. They apparently think I'm great, so I don't understand why it's so important to have me embrace a culture that has had no influence on how I turned out and diminish the value of the one culture that did influence my development. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my dad's wife I'm not her kid? My, 19 female, mom died 7 years ago. My dad remarried 8 months ago. She's an alright person, but a little weird. Even before she married my dad, she was calling me and my siblings her/their kids. My siblings are younger, so I kinda get it there. But me? I have never lived with her. I live in an apartment with friends, and we have been around each other maybe 11 times since our first introduction, which was when I had already moved out. Ever since she moved in, she has asked why I don't move back closer to home, so we can be a real family. So, a few weeks ago, my dad, his wife, and my siblings paid me a visit, and while they were here, she was talking about how proud she and my dad are of their daughter, and she called me her daughter multiple times. I said nothing to her in front of people, but when someone asked about my mom, I said, oh, my stepmother, just because I wasn't going to call her my mom. But I didn't make a big deal out of it, and I was not angry. She got upset and confronted me on it back at my place. I told her I didn't really know her. I didn't like her calling me her daughter. My dad stepped in and said it was harmless, but said if I didn't like it, he understood and maybe we could figure something else out. She said I am her kid now and she doesn't want me to feel left out. I told her I wouldn't. She said it would make me feel left out eventually. I told her I'm not some little kid and she didn't raise me. I have a mom and dad and I am not accepting another mother. She said it was unfair, that I had an issue with it because she's only trying to be a good mom to all of us. She also said my lack of calling her mom and accepting her into the motherly role has negatively impacted her bonding with my siblings. I told her I'm not home for it to influence them much. She's still upset and said I should be glad she wants me to be her kid, but I find it weird to be called someone's daughter when I hardly know them and when they did not raise me in any way. I also dislike that she introduces me as her daughter. Stepdaughter would have been fine. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. You're not the a-hole for having and enforcing this boundary. She isn't your mom, and frankly, it's a little weird that she's insisting on it. If it is harmless as your dad put it, why would it matter if she just called you her stepdaughter? Not the a-hole. Honestly, I think it is pretty generous of you to call her your stepmother. She is barely that. She is more like your father's wife, not the a-hole. Well, that was more to keep the peace, honestly. I call her my dad's wife otherwise, and might not use stepmom/stepmother if she decides she's going to make it a huge deal. That makes sense. That's why I thought it was already generous on your part. Haha. To be fair, she isn't doing it to be controlling. I think she genuinely wants to be a part of your life, but it isn't fair for her to attempt to force that. I do agree. It's just the way she reacted to my trying to set the boundary that has me feeling like, I'm not sure we'll get along too good if this is always going to be a thing. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help out my brother and his family when they're in need? My 28 female brother, 33 male, and his wife, 32 female, and their kids, 9 female, 7 male, and 5 male, ended up homeless 6 weeks ago after a lot of bad luck. They're currently staying with my parents while they're working things out. Everyone expected me to help out in some way, but I have not, and I do not plan to. The reason is, last year, my brother and I had a fight. I was away on vacation. My brother was looking for something in my home. I told him it was okay to get it while I was gone. He did more than that. He stayed in my house long enough for his kids to write and draw on my wall, pull up some of my carpet, break my couch, stuff my toilet with paper, and left me with it overflowing. Broke the shelf in my closet by climbing on it, from the looks of what I saw. Snooped through my room and threw my possessions around the place, and plug out my freezer. They also pulled up some of the flowers I had in my yard. Oh, and I found some stains in places and I never figured out what they were. But some things had to be replaced. My brother and the kids were the only people in my home when I was gone. I did not do it. But my brother denied it was them, and he has refused to pay me back ever since. I felt like that was a huge betrayal of my trust and a huge sign of disrespect. He never asked to pay it back in installments. He didn't offer to help clean it up. Said no when I asked if he was going to. His wife then calls me and claims I did it to my own house and set them up with it because I don't like my niece and nephews, which is not true. I have always loved them, but their behavior in the last couple of years has been less than amazing. Not that it's their fault or anything, but I feel like after everything, I don't owe them anything. I had to pay for all repairs and replacements and new paint job. They never once offered me anything. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Your brother tries to gaslight you into thinking that you caused the damage. And his kids drew on your walls and wrecked your home. Wow. And he doubles down without an apology. The nerve of your brother. I know, right? Also, if that's how they treat your house, I wouldn't want to help them and let them stay with you, or financially assist them. You already spent money on their mistakes. Don't make it a habit, and don't let them take advantage of you. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. It is not your job to take care of them. Plus, it looks like they have a problem with taking responsibility for their actions. He said that he needed one thing from your house, and then lets his kids wreck your house and refuse to come clean about it. I think it's absurd how often people suggest getting police involved here, but I would have definitely said, cool, if it wasn't you all, I guess someone broke in and I'll need to call the police. Too late now though. Not the a-hole, for all the reasons you listed. It's not about the money, it's about not owning up to the damage it caused your home. They can't afford to pay you now, but I'm sure you'd appreciate a heartfelt apology. Even if they thought that they were in the right, they could have still apologized for the damage. In my opinion, the money matters. It's part of what makes the apology real. If someone apologizes, but doesn't make any effort to right their wrong, it can feel a bit hollow. Don't get me wrong, an apology is better than nothing. But sometimes people use words because words are cheap and actions are dear. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe. First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my dad with a kidney transplant after he spent years denying he's my father? Okay, so I'm sure this might seem like a not the a-hole thing because it's my body, my choice, but everyone is coming down on me hard over this. Backstory. When I was 8, my dad found out my mom cheated on him. They tried to work it out, and I remember for years after, he just became a total jerk to me. It's like a switch went off and he suddenly hated me, which seriously hurt. I have two older brothers, and he always excluded me from everything he did with them. For a long time, I didn't get it. My parents used to fight over this, and I learned it was because my dad was convinced that I wasn't his. Yet, he didn't want to get a paternity test. His only argument was that I was the only son who didn't look like him, and looked more like my mom's side of the family. They divorced, and my dad only fought for custody of my brothers. Well, my mom passed away when I was 13, and I was sent to live with my maternal grandparents. By 17, I pretty much gave up and tried to have a relationship since he clearly didn't view me as a son. That changed 3 years ago when my brother and I, now 29, took a DNA test that showed we were full siblings, not half. We even had my grandma, his mom, do one too and confirmed he was wrong this whole time. Suddenly, he was calling me nonstop, but I told him to stay out of my life. He basically showed me how easily he can drop his paternal love, and I didn't want him around. I had to block him until he got the message. But now, my brothers are telling me he needs a kidney transplant, and we should find out if I'm compatible. When I said no, my dad called me himself to ask. He was pretty angry and upset when I told him the same, and he said it's not his fault. He didn't know I was his at the time, but really needs the help now so he can live long enough to make it up. We ended the conversation with me telling him I'd rather save my kidney for helping someone I actually care about, and I hope he finds a donor soon, but don't call me anymore. You can imagine the outrage I'm getting now? Not just my brothers, my dad's family, his new wife. All this pressure's being put on me to help out. What's hard is how my brothers have been acting. They're not compatible. Like I'm this monster, and I'm taking our dad away from us because I'm not willing to try helping him. I don't know. It's been very hard doing this, and being told by everyone in my life that it's very wrong when it's going to cost him his life. Now for the top judgment of this post, not the a-hole. If the pressure is too much, go get screened and tell the doctor you are being coerced. They should be able to just say you aren't a match. You aren't permitted to donate under these pressures. They can do that even if I don't actually get screened? I'm not positive. I suggest you contact your primary doctor about this and explain. See what your options are. Thanks for letting me know. I'll try to find out. He said it's not his fault he didn't know I was his at the time. It's literally his fault. He chose not to take a paternity test back then. He chose to just abandon you despite raising you. He chose to punish you for what your mother did. It's his fault, and he doesn't deserve your kidney. And everyone else who's angry at you over this can also get lost. They didn't do anything about his awful behavior either. Not the a-hole. This, OP became a stranger to the dad, and he did nothing after OP's mom died. Dad being sorry that there were consequences to himself is not an apology. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not giving money to help out my sister? Alright, this might sound like a horrible thing from the title, but please hear me out. This is a hard topic for me, and English isn't my native language, so I apologize in advance. I am an 18-year-old man, and my sister is 22. Ever since we were young, she was always the priority for my parents. Don't get me wrong, they never treated me badly, but she was obviously the one they put more effort in. She would get better clothes, a better room, an allowance, and other things. While I was never treated badly, things weren't as good for me. I was never given any pocket money by my parents, thus I started to work really early, 14, as I've learned a few skills in programming and had a good portfolio by then, GitHub, so it was easier for me to get freelancing jobs. In my country, there's some banks that allow people underage to open accounts, but they're still under supervision of their parents. Since I started to work, I became somewhat of an introvert, but that's not the point. Most of my adolescence, I spent working on projects. Everything I got, I used to help out with bills at my house and save the rest in my account. The reason I did that was because it is my dream to go to a specific university. It's my dream school, as they have an extremely respected course in programming. And while college itself is free in my country, living isn't. And that school is in one of the most expensive cities in my country. Now, I'm finally 18, and we're in the middle of the entrance exams. I already passed in the first test with flying marks, and I believe the next one shouldn't be a problem as well. However, since I turned 18, I'm no longer suitable for the same kind of bank account I had, which is only for underage, and needed to change. My mother and I went to the bank to change the account, and during that time, she saw the amount I had saved. I won't put numbers, but it's enough for me to live without working for the duration of the course, though it would be a frugal life. That day during dinner, she and my father started to talk about what I want to do in the future, and I explained to them. However, after a few moments, they stopped me in my tracks. They said that while it was all good that I had an objective, right now my sister was in financial trouble, as she just had her second kid, and her husband and her could really use some help. My mother asked me to give my sister my savings, and I was really shocked. I told her how much I worked for that, and that it was my money, and I didn't want to give it to my sister as that meant not going to my dream college, since my parents couldn't support me living there. My father said, "Well, you're still young and you can always earn more money. Your sister needs it." We argued more, and I went to my room. However, I'm being constantly harassed and called an a-hole by my family. There's so much of this that I can't help but feeling like I'm a horrible person. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Call your bank and make them aware of this and warn them of this. Make sure your account is in your name only and no one else can withdraw money. All the best to you. This, and if possible, some banks will even allow you to specifically put a list of people who are not allowed to be anywhere near the account and will call you if they try. Not the a-hole. If your sister is old enough to have 2 children and a husband, she's old enough to get her finances in line. Not to mention, it's your money. You earned it, and nobody should be forcing you to do anything you don't want to do with it. The fact that they took one look at your bank account and said, this should all go to our daughter, really does not sit right with me. Not the a-hole. It is your money. Make sure it is safe, Opie. Do not give her any. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting my stepsister to come stay with me? My mom moved in with her husband when I, 22 female, was 17. I moved out when I was 18. At the time, my mom's husband had his 3 daughters full-time. But last year, his oldest 14 female, started having issues due to trauma from some stuff that happened years before, and they were advised to give her space with some other family. She moved in with her grandparents, but it didn't help. Then when she was asked where she would ideally like to live, she said with me. She said she didn't really get to spend any time with me, but I was the older sister she always wanted. So, my mom called and explained what had happened she had said, and the reason she gave her wanting to live with me, and how all the professionals involved believed she needed to be comfortable and in a safe space where she felt capable of working through her trauma. And she asked me would I let her come live with me. She said before that, she knew I would say no, but she wanted to be the one to ask, because she's worried her husband would be too forceful. I told her she always knew me well and confirmed I was not okay with that. Her husband went nuclear on me. He accused me of being selfish and abandoning my sister in her hour of need. He told me you help family when they need you, even if you don't think you can. You do everything physically possible to help them. Then he started saying I was being unfair to my mom. After maybe 20 minutes of him ranting on the phone to me, he asked me what was the issue, and I told him. I'm 22, and I'm not sure I'm equipped to help a teenager who has the struggles his daughter has. He said my choice of wording, your daughter, was not very kind. He said, at least call her my sister. I said I didn't have that kind of relationship with his girls. Then he said that's what it was all about. I told him I know he needs to help his daughter, but he does need to find someone else because I am not in the position to do it. We almost had a repeat experience after I told my mom, and she told him to stop. And the second I answered the phone, he started cussing at me, so I hung up. Now I'm kinda wondering if I am in the wrong here, because I know he's just trying to help his daughter, and apparently, she attached to me way more than I attached to her in the 3 to 4 months we lived together, and a few times I was around them since. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole at all. You were not obligated to let your stepsister or anyone else move in with you. You are certainly not responsible for the mental health of a girl with whom you really don't have a relationship. I don't know a therapist would suggest that a 14-year-old with mental health issues should move in with someone with whom they have virtually no relationship. Your stepfather's the a-hole for trying to force the responsibility of his daughter's mental health on you. And Opie let him scream at her over the phone for 20 minutes? That's what hanging up is for. Followed by blocking that number. That kid is not Opie's job, and it sounds like a healthy job. Clearly not an a-hole. Well done for standing your ground and setting your boundaries. And to your mom too, for at least knowing you well enough to ask you herself first and predict your answer. I feel desperately sorry though, for your mom and stepsisters. Your mom's husband seems rageful, selfish, and lacking in empathy. I'm not surprised your stepsister is struggling so, aside from any other trauma. I hope she gets the help she needs. Not an a-hole. Good for you for knowing you can't help the kid out and saying so. Adding a kid to the household you run is hard enough. Adding a kid with trauma even more so. My mom moved in with her husband when I, 22 female, was 17. I moved out when I was 18. Stepsister said she didn't really get to spend any time with me, but I was the older sister she always wanted. She feels this way from 1 year spent in the same house? Less than 1 year. Yeah, I'd say stepsister has built up a fantasy of you and how things would be if you shared a residence. Definitely not a good starting place for a kid with trauma. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom it's her fault my sister got arrested? My 23 female, mother 41 female, is the reason why I moved out at an early age. She spent most of my childhood going out to clubs and drinking. I spent most of my time at my grandmother's or my aunt's. Not to mention that she was constantly putting me down when I was a teenager and was taking most of my money when I got a job at age 16 to pay for her gambling addiction. Her behavior did not get better when my sister, 19 female, came along. My sister has been getting into trouble since she was around 14. My mom never really seemed to give a damn, and I think my sister saw that as a permission to go and do whatever she wanted. 2 days ago, my mom called me and told me that my sister was arrested for substance possession and theft, along with her boyfriend, 27 male, and that she needed me to lend her money to bail my sister out, which I did. I went over to my mom's house to check up on my sister, and whilst I was there, my mom started saying that she doesn't understand how my sister ended so effed up, her exact words, and that she's about to kick my sister out because she's sick of her. My mom was pretty much thrashing my sister continuously. I got agitated and blatantly told my mom that it's her fault that my sister got arrested because she failed as a mother. Which I know sounds harsh, but it's the truth. My mom was furious, told me that my sister and I are just ungrateful. Then she tried to blame me for moving out of home, instead of staying and looking after my sister. Long story short, I'm no longer allowed to go over my mom's house. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Long story short, I'm no longer allowed to go over my mom's house. Long story short, this is no loss. Not the a-hole. This one, it's a blessing. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Your mom sounds like an irresponsible narcissist. Yup, too wrapped up in her own world to care that her 19-year-old is off doing D's and stealing with her 27-year-old boyfriend. Throwed a lot of them in the trash. Not the a-hole. If you don't actually parent your child, you can't be surprised or angry when they make bad choices. Maybe this will serve as a wake-up call for your sister, and she can turn her life around. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe.